Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth, and fancy seeing you here in June. A very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. Welcome back to Big Mouth, and welcome to today's dceu Extra. If you want to continue any conversation I ignite on here, add me on Instagram, Big Mouth, and on Twitter, at Movies TV Mad. Okay. Clearing my throat for you, because I want to show you some things and then I want to discuss them. It's nothing that you haven't seen before, but I want to talk about something. And I think it's really, really important that we reiterate how important the release of the Snyder Cut is. Now, if you notice here, he's barefooted, something I've never noticed before in this scene. Now, what's interesting about this scene is they put this on the actual theatrical cut, Blu-ray and 4K release in the deleted scenes, which I think is extraordinary. I think it's amazing that they even deleted this scene. This scene is so emotional with the Man of Steel music. He's just come back to life. He's coming back from the farm, I think. As you see the black suits there, but he chooses the traditional red and blue. And there he is. What an emotional, powerful moment. What a great throwback to Man of Steel as well.
I'm assuming you're Alfred.
Master Kent. He said he'd come. Now let's hope we're not too late.
Now, there's a little sign from an emergency awesome I wanted to see here. Let's see what happens. Let's see what comes up here.
Chris Terry and I had finished the script for Justice League before this movie came out. Right? So that script was done. The movie came out, and some people didn't like the movie. A vocal minority. And so I was asked by the studio, I said, hey, you can't do a lot of stuff we don't want you to do. And that's what.
So, very, very interesting. I wasn't sure what that video is, just something we've seen before anyway. That was at SnyderCon, wasn't it? So, we saw two scenes there that were cut out of the Justice League theatrical version. Now, I think about the moment he walks in to his ship, and it's very emotional. He's been on the farm. I've done it again, haven't I? I left this phone in here. Never mind, ignore it. I always say that, don't I? But it's very interesting because I'm starting to put two and two together, because it's very interesting if you look at this, what the Snyder Cut actually is. So they actually cut things out that they should have left in. That's what's... You see, why would you cut that scene with Alfred out? I suppose the scene with Alfred is losable. If you think about it, it's still awesome for Superman and Alfred. To me, that's a rarity even in the comics. So it would have been a pretty awesome thing. But that moment when he walks into the ship and they all open up these different suits, these different costumes, and you can see the black suit there, and then he chooses the red and blue, and then you see him come out the ship like he did in Man of Steel. It's really iconic. After everything he's been through, he's got to suit up again and take this fight to Steppenwolf. Now, what's really interesting about this for me is, why would you cut that out? It doesn't make sense. And the only reason you cut that out is to save time. We already know that they wanted a short movie. Now, they wanted Justice League to be this MCU type movie. Well, MCU movies can be over 2 hours. So that was weird. But they thought that the kind of audience they wanted to attract had a short attention span. So they didn't really care about us. They wanted to bring the mainstream audience in, and they thought they could make $1 billion on this movie. There is no way a movie that so horribly desecrates the appearance of Henry Cavill and Superman can ever make $1 billion. It was never going to happen. I don't know what they were thinking. But that's the past, and we have to look at the future now. And the future is this, that there is no way that the Snyder Cut can't be released. When we think about what we lost, we saw Cyborg, lots of Cyborg stuff deleted as well. And you think about the scene they replaced the Lois and Martha talking. So originally, I think it was at Lois's apartment, right? Am I correct? Comment down below if I'm wrong. But they changed it to the Daily Planet. Again, I don't know why they did that. What difference does it make? The scene that Whedon rewrote and reshot with Lois and Martha is shit. It's shit. It's terrible. They tried to have some funny moments. The whole thing about the guy asking if the source is good looking. Look, I don't get it. That was supposed to be an emotional scene originally, and I don't understand. Only Whedon knows. I mean, Whedon was given a remit by Kevin Sugihara. Nobody else, not Jeff Johns, nobody else you want to blame. Kevin Sugihara gave him a remit to make it lighter and funnier in places. But you don't do that to a Martha and Lois scene. Martha and Lois lost something massive in BVS. Lois lost her potential heart, her potential husband, her potential fiance, and Martha lost her adopted son, who meant everything to her. She can't even tell the world that's Superman. Imagine that. And there's so many emotional beats they could have used, and I'm sure that Zack would have used those emotional beats within the scene that he set up. But why would you cut that scene out? So they purposely wanted... you see, that's the problem they had from the beginning, because Justice League continues from Superman's death. Now, that's very... I mean, I know there was some lighter elements in Zack's Justice League. I know that for a fact. But you can't trample on an icon's death. You can't make that fucking funny, can you? You can't. So, for me, when you think about what they cut out, as I say, even though I would have loved to have seen the Alfred meet Superman things, that's a scene you can definitely lose. Being someone who's attempted to direct, who's been at film school, I kind of understand why you would lose that scene. There's not much there, but it's still awesome. I'd still like to see it as part of the Snyder Cut, and I hope that we do. And I think it was obviously... look, it's in a trailer. That kind of thing when the whiskey glass is shaking. So they were obviously not going to cut that scene. Snyder's version, that scene was in. So that's cool. But when he walks into the ship, for me, I don't understand that. I don't understand why you would cut that. It's so emotional. It's so compelling. It's the moment before Superman has to go to battle after everything that he's been through. So again, doesn't make sense. I just saw a kind of a montage of all the stuff that they cut. We saw Iris. We saw the actor who plays Iris in the harness in the green screen, and she seems lovely. And I mean, how dare they cut her out? How dare they? I mean, her and all the actors, male and female, who have been cut from this movie. There's even a scene apparently in the Snyder Cut, and I don't think I can show you this, but you can see it on YouTube. And when one of the people from Themyscira, one of the women, is about to become a parademon, and she actually kills herself before it can happen. Again, Warner Brothers didn't want this, or should we say Sugihara didn't want this. This is what Snyder's universe is. This is what Snyder was trying to do, create something real, compelling, serious. But Warner Brothers didn't want that. They wanted quick, easy money. Let's become the MCU and make $1 billion a movie. Kevin Sugihara missed one point. Yes, the MCU were making $1 billion a movie, but even if the DCEU became the MCU, that would never happen. It wouldn't, because it never started that way. Because if Jeff Johns was running this from the beginning without Zack Snyder and Christopher Nolan, Chris Terrio and David Goyer, then maybe he could have gone that way, and maybe it would have been really successful. But the people, the fandom who grabbed hold of this franchise, loved it because of what Zack, Chris Terrio, David Goyer were doing. You can't all of a sudden say to those people, we're sorry, you're not needed here anymore. We're changing it. We want the MCU. We want $1 billion a movie. And this is how Release the Snyder Cut happened. Because they let us loose. They let us loose and said, we don't care about you. You're not important. We just want the mainstream. We want people to buy toys. And maybe that's what they should have done as a business. Doing a DC cinematic extended universe. Maybe that's what they should have done as a business. Yes, absolutely. But they didn't. They didn't think of that. Warner Brothers wanted Christopher Nolan in. Warner Brothers and Sujihara should have thought about this before they got him involved, because selling toys and merchandise and working a franchise as a business isn't what Christopher Nolan does. That, for crying out loud, is why he brought Zack Snyder in, because he wanted someone to do something incredibly special and unique. And that's what Zack Snyder did, right? It's what he says on the packet. Zack Snyder is Zack Snyder. It's like Ryan Johnson, bringing him in and expecting him to do what J.J. Abrams did or George Lucas did. Ryan Johnson can only be Ryan Johnson. I have my opinions of The Last Jedi. I found it a boring, mediocre film, but ultimately I can't expect someone to become somebody else. That's my defense of Ryan Johnson and my defense of Zack Snyder. Now, I love what Zack Snyder did with the DCEU, and I think we were about to see. But you see, we were about to see something special. But what's interesting about this, Warner Brothers wanted to make $1 billion, avoid the criticism and the outrage, what we would have surely got with a Snyder Justice League movie. And what's interesting here, after all the hate for Snyder and all the hate for the DCEU movies, it's interesting now because I think because of what happened, because of the way they threw Zack off, because of all the truths being revealed now, I think this can turn things around, not only for the DC Cinematic Universe and Zack's vision, but for Zack himself. I think Zack's going to win himself a lot of fans once this movie is shown. And I think, to me, that's not only just very interesting and very exciting if you're a Snyder fan, especially if you're a DCEU fan, because what Zack did with these first two movies was they actually look like comic book movies. When you read a comic book, I would imagine what Zack Snyder gave us rather than what anyone come before him has given us. Even with the MCU, it's very basic, the vision of a superhero. But I imagine if Zack Snyder directed an MCU movie, I want you to think about it, Marvel fans, it would actually look like how you imagine a comic book universe. That's what Zack Snyder does. Something extremely special. So even though Zack was creating superheroes in the real world in a way, the way he did it, the way they look, the implementation, especially Man of Steel, with computer-generated effects, is beautiful because it all looks real. It all looks like you're seeing a Superman flying around in the real world. But the effects are so beautiful. And the mixing of real stuff and CGI was totally amazing. One of the big accusations and disappointments of the theatrical cut of Justice League, that the CGI was bad. Well, you can never say that about a Zack Snyder film. The man his imagery is amazing. And he cares about what the audience see. And the other stuff comes later. Maybe you could accuse him of saying maybe the other stuff's less important to him, but I don't think that's true. I just think he wants the imagery to look right, and it does beyond right. He gives you the imagery, visually, he gives you more than you ever expect. It's the way it's the way a comic book world should be brought to life. He is the George Lucas and Steven Spielberg of our era, but he goes beyond them. He goes beyond James Cameron. I imagine Zack Snyder doing Avatar. Much better than what you saw in the first Avatar film. Now, James Cameron's a genius, but I believe that Zack Snyder is our fantasy director of this modern era. And he's been treated so badly. And all of a sudden, Release the Snyder Cut is trending. The world is seeing Zack in a positive light, because even the people who don't like him now are intrigued about this movie. Kevin Sujihara made a mistake. Zack should have been allowed to do his movie, then to be allowed to move on. We still wouldn't have been happy, no. But at least his arc would have been kind of completed in some way. Not the vision he first foresaw, but at least it's something. But this way, This gives Zach a big opportunity, because it's amazing how things can change in this industry, not just in this industry, in sports, in anything. You can think badly and low of someone, but all of a sudden, you see a group of people backing that person. You know, the fans and the director at one, and the creative at one. I've never seen anything like it. We are helping him and he's helping us to bring something that we want to see. We've picked him up and Deb up in a desperate time, because what they've gone through is beyond being chucked off a film. They lost a daughter. Imagine, they lost a daughter. Can you even imagine that? I shouldn't even be talking about this. This is a personal thing. And I'm sorry to bring it up now and again, and I hope I'm doing it respectfully. As you all know, I lost my mother, but she was 77. Imagine losing a child, and knowing that that child ended their lives and everything that comes with that. They must be so strong. But of course, nobody's that strong, are they? Because that is the most devastating thing ever. The YouTuber, that Star Wars girl, lost a sister. I said to her, you know, I lost my mother this year, but, you know, losing a sibling, I don't know how I'd cope with that. So it's not just about releasing the Snyder Cut. And I spoke about that this morning. I spoke about the phases of getting him back on the dceu, getting Air's cut of Suicide Squad released as well. But I think when we look at this at a personal level, everything's come together in a way to get this movie out, to dedicate it to autumn if they want. And I think that should be an option. But also, as I say, it's the personal thing. And this is a real life story. These are people's feelings. The way they were treated was terrible. But this happens so many times. Do you realise there's a 90% of Solo a Star Wars story was completed by Lord and Miller? If they were allowed to come back, they could finish their movie. But of course, Disney's never going to let that happen, no matter what fans, even if they were as good as us doing what we've done, release the Snyder Cut. It just would not be possible. Maybe it would, who knows? I think their movie is probably a lot more entertaining and fun than what we've got. But we're not here to talk about Lord and Miller. But Lord and Miller were going to do the Flash movie. That would have been a very fun, light movie. Probably not what we would want, and certainly not what Ezra Miller wants. As I say, in terms of the Flash movie, I am convinced that we're getting a Flashpoint movie. I think it's what Zack wanted originally. That's why I think he's coming back full time. But I want us to fight for that, because I think that's important. We want Zack installed back. And I think Warner Brothers understand that now. And I think they have got the setup now to do that, where you've got someone like Walter Hamada who can come in to Zack and say, do you know what, Zack? You know, I want to work with you. But when Zack gets a bit carried away, maybe he does need someone to pull him back just a little bit, but not to mess with his vision. But at the end of the day, Warner Brothers own the properties and they have to have a little say. But there has to be kind of this thing where people work together instead of working apart. And I think that's the problem with what happened with the DCEU, what happened with BVS, and what happened with Suicide Squad. And that's why we're fighting for David's cut of Suicide Squad to be released as well. People have to work together, want the same things. And I think if Zack came back now, I think that would happen. The Snyder Cut, the story of that is a very unique. Do you see that fly? Bloody hell, man. Summer's back in Cyprus, but I think it is a unique story. I think it's amazing. Go away. Sorry about that. I'm losing it. But yeah, sorry if I offended anyone by trying to doing that fly, but it was going to go in my ear and give me some kind of disease. We don't want that, do we? But yeah, a very unique story. More unique than any film. And I think the fight that we've put to win it, to get it back, to see it, because we're so desperate to see it, and get justice for Zack, is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of things in my life, a lot of things. I think it goes beyond the Donner Cut. It goes beyond anything. I just feel that there's an emotional backstory to release the Snyder Cut. And I think when we do win this battle, and I think we will, it's always going to be remembered. It's going to be the most unique thing. How am I so confident we're going to get this cut? Well, I've explained that to you before. Bloggers would not be jumping on the bandwagon if this wasn't happening. They're jumping on the bandwagon at the 11th hour. Don't think I don't realise that to all those bloggers out there. You think you're clever, but you're not. Now, we'll use you and we'll use your following to get what we want. But we haven't forgotten how you were calling us crazy, toxic people and how we were crazy religious lunatics. All of a sudden now, because there's a voice and attention to us, and you know it's going to happen, you want to get on our side. Now, this is happening because of the fans and Zack Snyder joining together. Make no mistake. Please comment down below about what you've seen on today's video. Please like, share and subscribe. Share the channel, share the video, and let's keep on building this wonderful community because the Snyder Cut is coming.